Well, it's corn harvest season, and as I was sitting around today reminiscing about how corn has been harvested over the years on my farm, I decided I would put together a little slideshow about the various ways that corn has been harvested here. Uh, a disclaimer, the pictures here, except for the last two, are not the actual pictures of the actual equipment that was here on my farm. They're just pictures that I pulled off the internet. But anyway, the first piece of corn harvesting equipment that I can remember back many years ago, my grandfather had purchased a WD-45 Alice Chalmers new that, of course, I still have here at the farm, and they had an old Alice Chalmers mounted corn picker. I don't remember the model number, but this is a picture of one of those rigs right here. It was not around here long enough that I wasn't big enough to operate this at the time, but I can distinctly remember it. And I guess the biggest thing I remember about this, that mounting it on the tractor was a pretty involved process. It wasn't just it wasn't as simple as driving into a like a New Idea picker. You had to drive into the bottom part, then hang all the snoots and the elevator, and it was pretty involved. But at that time, back in the early '60s, this rig picked not only the corn here at my farm, but several other farms around. Some of the neighbors, we had the tractor and corn picker here, and another neighbor had an elevator, another neighbor had a couple of wagons, and they all kind of worked together, as was common back then. And my understanding was this rig picked quite a bit of corn. Then fast forward to when I actually purchased my farm from my grandparents back in the late 1970s. At that time, I don't remember when they purchased it, but at some point my grandfather purchased this New Idea 323 one-row pull-type corn picker, which is the corn picker that I ended up buying when I bought the farm and the equipment from my grandparents. It was a pretty good little corn picker. It wasn't very old at that time, and it did a pretty good job. Was pretty reliable, and I had this for several years. Of course, the only downfall with it was that it was a one row, and it was kind of slow. And well, a few years went forward, and I started working back and forth with the good friend of mine who I later ended up with becoming business partners with and milking cows together with. But at that time, he was farming at his parents' home farm, and we sort of partnered up to pick corn. And so we decided that a two-row corn picker would be more in order. And so I traded the one-row New Idea picker for a mounted picker. I bought a New Idea 305 mounted picker on a Super M. And so this is what I used for a few years. I not only picked my corn here at home, my friend who I was kind of starting to farm together with, at his dairy farm, we filled a 14 by 50 stave silo with high moisture ground ear corn. So yeah, at that time he had a farmhand grinder blower, and we would pick the high moisture ear corn, grind it, and shoot it up in the silo. So that took a few days, but the problem with the 305 was, of course, the Super M. I liked that tractor, had it around for a few years, and used it outside of the corn picking season. But the 305 only had an 8-row husking bed, and the high moisture ear corn didn't go through the 8-row 8-roll bed very well. So after a few years, we upgraded a little bit. And at that time, I had already had a 460 Farmall, so we picked up a 319 New Idea mounted picker. It had the 12-roll husking bed, the bigger husking bed, and the high moisture corn went through that pretty good. And yeah, we could knock out a fair amount of corn in a day. Of course, we were restricted, both of us, by the fact that we had to milk cows in the morning and then gas up, grease up, and get ready and pick corn, and then knock off back in time to milk cows back in the evening. But yeah, 20 loads a day was a pretty good day with this rig. Of course, it was picking corn with the mounted 2-row picker was it was not a pleasant job. It was a dirty job. You got by the end of the day, you were just filthy and gritty, and it was noisy. I had to wear. I had never worn ear protection before that, but the 2 elevators on each side of your head made enough noise. I started wearing ear protection because it gave me headaches, and so we used this rig until my friend quit farming at his parents' farm. He was out of farming for a few years, so I sold this rig then, and we started going to a method that was a little more pleasant, and started using pull-type pickers. And so I picked up a used New Idea 324 picker at an auction, and used it for a few years. I actually had 2 of these. The one I bought at an auction I used for a few years, and then my friend, who at that time we had sort of started farming together, he picked up one from his former brother-in-law that. We picked that one up with the intention of using it as a parts machine, but as sometimes happens, I got it home and got looking at it, and decided it was better than the one I'd been using. So the first one that I bought at an auction, I ended up parking and using it as a parts machine. And I still have that one, the original one. I still have sitting back behind my barn, kind of out in the weeds. Every once in a while I think about maybe resurrecting it, but I don't know, that might happen, it might not. But I did that for a few years. When I was, when we were milking cows here, we picked ear corn, had a couple of corn cribs, and I ended up, I would, about once a week, I would shovel ear corn into a mixer mill, and that's how we got feed for the cows. Yeah, shoveling ear corn it kept me in shape, I guess. Either that or ended up breaking me. I don't know which. But I did that until I sold the dairy cows, and of course, when I sold the dairy cows, at first I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Wasn't like a lot of dairy farmers, didn't know if there would be life after dairy, but it turns out there is. But anyway, I rented out my tillable land here at my farm for a few years, and for 1 or 2 years I didn't grow corn. And then after mulling things over for a while after I sold my dairy herd, I decided that I would give a try to growing organic corn. But of course, so one thing that I wanted to do, I wanted to be able to harvest it myself. I didn't want to mess around trying to find somebody with a combine that would do my little dab of corn. So I decided to stick with something I was familiar with. I was looking for a New Idea 324 with a sheller on it, and eventually I found one. This is a picture of the one I bought. I took this picture the day I brought it home. I found it on Craigslist. It was about 50 miles away, so I went over and hooked onto it with the truck and pulled it home. It worked pretty good. Actually, the very first video I posted on YouTube, if you go to my video library and go back to the very beginning, is a short video clip of this rig in action, shelling corn, hooked onto my the old 806 International. If you have any desire to see it work, you can look that up. Like I said, it was the very first video I posted on YouTube, and it didn't work too bad. It doesn't have a huge amount of volume, but I went slow and it did what I wanted to. But in the meantime, I sort of had a hankering to play with a combine, and so for a couple of years I'd been looking around online, and eventually found my current corn picking rig. So yeah, this is how I harvest corn now with my trusty John Deere 3300 combine. This is the smallest combine John Deere made in the 1970s, but it's big enough to do what I want to do. Those of you who've been watching my channel for a while know that I found this one out in Iowa a couple of years ago, about 80 miles away from me. It was sitting in a shed unused for 15 years, and so I towed it home, brought it back to life, and now it's doing what I need it to do. So that's kind of a brief look at how corn has been harvested here at my farm for since the 1960s. So I hope you found this little jaunt down memory lane interesting. So next week, hopefully, I'll get back to harvesting corn in the here and now. So until then, have a good day.